Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Cantlow-Cockfield, and I'm the Assistant Counsel to Brooklyn Borough President Eric L. Adams. And I'm joined by Richard Barrick, who is our Land Use Director, as well as Ina Gusenfeld, she's in the back, and she is our Land Use Coordinator. There is one item on the agenda this evening. Please note that this hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency. It will be available for viewing on Borough President Adams's website, brooklyn-usa.org, or on the One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. Again, web users may submit timely comments to Ask Eric at brooklynbp.nyc.gov for Borough President Adams's consideration. Please call the first item and let us begin.
Calendar item number 142 150 South Portland Avenue, 180096 ZMK, 180097 ZRK.
These applications submitted by South Portland LLC and Randolph Hague Daycare Center, Inc., pursuant to Section 197-C of the New York City Charter, seeking zoning map and text amendments to change the northern portion of a block on Hanson Place between South Portland Avenue and South Elliott Place from an R7A to an R8A zoning district. Establish a C24 commercial overlay to a depth of 100 feet along Hanson Place. Extend the current special downtown Brooklyn district coterminous with the area proposed for the R8A zoning district. Amend the special downtown Brooklyn district regulations to impose a 95-foot height limitation within 25 feet of an R7A district for developments fronting South Portland Avenue within an R8A district, and established a mandatory inclusionary housing area pursuant to options 1 and 2 within the proposed R8A district. Such actions are intended to facilitate the development of the property at 142-150 South Portland Avenue with a mixed-use residential and community facility building with a height of 13 stories containing 100 dwelling units, all intended to be tenanted through an affordable housing lottery. Community Board 2 voted to disapprove this application with conditions on February 14th, 2018. Would Matthew Schumer, the representative for this application, please state your name for the record and present the application? So before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge Marilyn Mosley from Comptroller Stringer's office. And from City Council Member Lori Cumbo's office, Crystal Hudson.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you. My name is Matthew Schumer from the law firm Sheldon Lobel PC. Appearing on behalf of the applicants, the Hanson Place Seventh-day Adventist Church and MDG Design and Construction and Affordable Housing Developer. I know we have a lot of speakers probably tonight, so we're going to try to keep this presentation fairly brief. Again, it's a proposed zoning map amendment and text change to facilitate a new 13 and 9-story building with community facility space, church space, as well as much needed affordable housing in the area. To kind of give a general overview of the project, I'm going to have Matt Rooney, CEO of MDG Design and Construction, come up and speak a little bit about the project.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Rooney. I am the CEO of MDG Design and Construction, and we're here to talk a little bit about the proposed zoning change for South Portland. I'm accompanied by several team members, Peter from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Peter Beck from Forsyth Street Advisors, Stephanie from OCV Architecture, Stephen Williams from MDG, Sandy and Matt from Richard LaBelle's office, who are helping us with this zoning change. We want to talk to you a little bit today, really about how this project came to be. We were approached by the church to help them develop this building and this lot into something that would really benefit the community. And so what you'll see is first, the requirement that the church gave us was that it had to be affordable. It had to be something that would not further gentrify the neighborhood, but would actually be for people, working people in the neighborhood to be able to apply for. And so that really resonated. What you'll see is that we have 25 apartments at 60% AMI, 25 apartments at 100% AMI, 49 apartments at 130% AMI. And this is how we came to these numbers, really based on the financial feasibility of this site. It is a lot of money that goes into building a building like this, and it is important to the church that not only is it affordable, but it's also producing community space for the local community. So this is something that we were able to make the project work under these numbers, and we would always strive to make it as affordable as possible. That is our mission. And then beyond that, I'll invite Peter up in a second to talk a little bit more about this, but 22,000 square feet of community space. We're really trying to make sure that this space does not just go to something that goes to the highest bidder in the neighborhood. It needs to be something that is actually going towards the community. So the first thing you'll see here is conference rooms and office space for church and community use. I don't think I have to tell everyone that it is difficult as a not-for-profit, such as the church, to really be able to support programs and things like this. And this building gives them an excellent opportunity to actually hold those community events and those types of events for the community. After that, you have affordable health care services for community residents. That was a need that the church really identified. They saw medical facilities being priced out of the neighborhood and trying to provide not just an affordable space for residents, but an affordable space for medical use that could really provide to the local community. Along with that, the church plans to expand on their social services, something that they've already contributed a lot to the neighborhood through their programs. There will be a multi-purpose space with commercial kitchen, which is great for being able to host events in an area where space comes with a high premium, and then music instruction programs for the church and for the community, something that can often be sort of displaced when it comes to a high rent area. The goal is to provide these types of services for people who otherwise would not be able to thrive in this neighborhood. Spaces just keep rising in rent, and this is there to stop sort of all of that and try to provide a space that people can really meet in and utilize. I'd like to call up the church to be able to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bernard Penn, my last name P-E-N-N. I'm the senior pastor of the Hanson Place Church, and I'm here with several of our members this evening to make this presentation. I want you to know that we are here today because we seek to serve our community. At the Hanson Place Church, everything that we have, every bit of money that we receive goes back into our community. Those of you who are in the neighborhood, you know that we do much in the community. We have a community services department that are busy just about 7 days a week to serve our community. We have a AA meeting in our church, and that meets there free of charge. We have music programs. We have many things that we've done over the years. But as a church, we want to do more. And as a church, we've been praying over the last several years on how we can do more. Those of you who know, you know that we have a building that now houses our community services department that's been in disrepair for many years. And we're not proud of that building. It is a blight in our community. And so we would like to do something to beautify our community, not only that, so that we can do more in our community. And so you will hear about the plans that we've set forth. And so we want you to know that the development company did not seek us, we sought them out, because we want you to know that we want to serve our community more. What we'd like to have in the building, we would like to have a conference room. We would like to have a community space where we can have different programs. We'll invite speakers for our community to improve our community, exercise classes free of charge. In the cellar, we want to have a medical center to serve our community. Right now, we have a space for our young people in our community, but we would like to do more. We'd like to have mentoring programs. We'd like to have a space for young people to come and to be able to have a safe place. And we'd like to have a place for our seniors to come and learn about computers and different things. We want to have a community building. As I've already stated, everything that we do is done for our community. And we have our community in mind as we seek to build this building for our community. And so we would like to have your support. And we want you to know that we are here today, not because of us, but because we have the community in mind. And so we hope that as we move forward, that we'll be able to serve our community even greater than we do today. I'd just like to ask the members of the Hanson Place Church to stand and support today those who are here. You see that many of us have come today to show that we want to serve our community even more than we do today. And we hope that you will be with us as we seek to do all that we can to serve our community, so that this building will be a blessing to young people yet born. And we hope that this building will continue to be one, as we look to it, to be a blessing to all of those who will come by and to be served by it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor. I'm going to now get into some of the more specifics of the zoning and the request, the reason that we're here. The first slide here is a location map. The project area is outlined in red. Hanson Place to the north, South Portland Avenue to the east, South Elliott Place to the west, and a line approximately mid-block is the proposed rezoning area. The current zoning right now is R7A, and it's located in an inclusionary housing designated area. You also see the special downtown Brooklyn district, which is immediately to the west of the site. So I think there's a couple things to note about the current zoning, and one of those is that the R7A district was created as part of the Fort Greene Clinton Hill rezoning in 2007. While most of the areas within the rezoning area were downzoned to R6B, city planning identified and the community identified some areas that are appropriate for additional residential development and zoned many of those areas R7A, including this site. It's also, I think, important to note that within the R7A district, an as-of-right building with inclusionary housing can be built to a height of 95 feet and could contain a one-story community facility portion that covers the entire lot. Again, here's another tax map of the development site. It's about 12,000 square feet with 120 feet of frontage, and a photo of the current development site. We have some more photos here. I'm just going to run through these quickly, pointing out some relevant things. So facing southwest from South Portland Avenue, you'll see picture number one of the 15-story residential buildings that's also on this block. Again, you'll see another one of the 15-story buildings on the right side of the screen. And on the intersection of South Elliott Place and Hanson Place, This is the Salvation Army building in photo number 15 there. This is a 12-story community facility building with supportive housing. A couple more photos here. And this is a photo that we recently took from, pulled from Google Maps, kind of showing the overall context of the area. You can see on the left side, on the south side, there's 2 existing 15-story residential buildings, 8-story commercial building on the lower right corner, the Salvation Army that I just mentioned before, a 12-story community facility building that recently had a 4-story enlargement, and then a couple other 15 and 14-story buildings across Hanson Place. So this is just kind of giving a feel of the context of the area, how a 13-story building really fits in nicely with this existing context. So why are we here? There's 4 actions that we're requesting and we're proposing. The first one is to change an R7A district to an R8A district and have a commercial overlay 100 feet deep along Hanson Place. The second required action would be to extend the special downtown Brooklyn district to include the rezoning area. And there's been, I think, a lot of confusion about this issue. Really, the only reason why why we want to extend the special downtown Brooklyn district is because it would allow us to create this special height limitation adjacent to the R7A district. So there's an existing R7A district that allows building heights up to 95 feet. What we're intending to do is create a new text, which is number 3 here, which would limit the height to 95 feet adjacent to that district. So respect and have some deference to that existing R7A district, while allowing the rest of the area to be developed up to the R8A 13 stories. And finally, the last action would be to establish the rezoning area as a mandatory inclusionary housing area, which would require any new residential development to have permanently affordable housing. In our case, we have 30% permanently affordable housing. I'm sorry, 25%. Here's just a map of the proposed zoning changes. Again, you'll see the R7A district to the south of the development site. And then again, within 25 feet of that district, we are limiting the building heights to 95 feet. Another map showing basically the same information here. And here's the proposed text for the height limitation. States in R8A districts between Hanson Place and Academy Park Place, no building that fronts South Portland Avenue shall exceed a height of 95 feet if it's located within 25 feet of an R7A district. Here we have the mandatory inclusionary housing map. The larger outline is the current voluntary inclusionary housing district, where inclusionary housing is incentivized but not required, and this new inclusionary housing area would be mapped that is mandatory. And now I'm going to call up the architect, Stephanie, to discuss a little bit about the building design.
Thank you. My name is Stephanie Paul. I'm from the Architect's Office, OCV Architects. Here we're seeing the existing building, which is on the site right now, and the proposed design, which includes 3 entrances for the 3 different uses in the building. So at the left side or the south side, we have the entrance to the community space that the church will be using. At the center of the building, we have the entrance to the medical offices in the cellar. And on the right-hand side or the north end of the building, we have the entrances to the residential portion of the building. You also see in this image that the building is stepping up, responding to the conditions of the site with the lower townhouses to the left and the higher commercial building to the right. Here we're seeing the way the building, again, responds to the site through the color usage. So we have some brown textures in the building which respond to the brown stones. We have the red colors which respond to the red brick of the church across the street. And we have the lighter colors to help the building recede at the back for the taller portions of the building. And again, here you can see the 3 entrances to the building. So this is the medical office space in the cellar of the building, which you would enter through the middle entrance on the ground floor. And the medical office space is the majority of this floor, and then you have some back of house spaces for the residential portion of the building also at this level. On the first floor, we see the community space that the church would be using. You have the multi-purpose room and several practice rooms that the church would use. And you would enter this space at the left-hand side of the building. Again, you see the medical office entry at the center and the residential entry on the right-hand side or the north side of the building. Here we have a couple of the types of units that we would have in the building. So they range from studios to 3-bedroom units. We also have on this second floor of the building the common green roof terrace, which would be used by the residents. And then we have the typical floor plan, which basically shows, again, the unit distribution on the typical floors. And as the building increases in height, this footprint would decrease, alluding to the stepping back of the building that we saw in the first image. And Peter Beck will come and speak about the affordability portion.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Beck with Forsyth Street Advisors. We're the affordable housing consultant to the development team. I'm going to talk a little bit about the proposed affordable housing program here. 100% of the building will be affordable housing. It will be at a mix of income levels. We have approximately 1/4 of the units would be affordable to 60% of AMI. Which is typically called low income in the affordable housing world. 25% of the units would be affordable at 100% of AMI, which is what we call moderate income. And then finally, the remainder of the units would be 130% of AMI, which is middle income. What affordability means here is that every unit would be protected by a regulatory agreement with the city that will have a duration of 40 years. And that will be 40 years from completion of the project. At the end of that regulatory agreement, all the units will be further protected by rent stabilization. So any tenants in occupancy after 40 years continue to enjoy rent stabilization protections for as long as they're in the unit. Additionally, approximately 30% of the units would be mandatory inclusionary housing. So those units are permanently affordable, and permanently means forever. At the community board, we heard some comments that moderate and middle income housing is basically the same thing as market rate, and we disagree. We think that's unfair. The average rents for new buildings in Fort Greene are much higher than our 130% of AMI middle income tier. We've done a survey of what's on the market, and this includes both new buildings and existing buildings. We found that market rate studios average $2,300 per month. One bedrooms, these are real figures. One bedrooms average $2,800 per month. Two bedrooms average $3,800 per month. 3 bedrooms average almost $4,000 per month. And these are just averages. So for new buildings, the figures are much higher. There's a brand new building a few blocks away from our site that's leasing studios for $2,800 and 1 bedrooms for $4,000. So the 130% of AMI units in this project are going to provide middle income housing that will help keep people in the neighborhood. We need the middle income units in this building to finance the project. Even with the church providing its land to this project, the building still costs $500,000 per unit to build. That's what construction costs are. The project would not be financially feasible if we didn't have the middle income units to help cross-subsidize the remainder of the affordable housing program. And that's the concept behind the city program that we're using to finance this project. It's called the Mixed Middle Income Program. The idea is you have both middle income units and low income units that enables the city to finance the project with a limited amount of public subsidy. So to wrap it up, we believe that middle income projects like this are exactly what the city needs. If we build nothing but market rate housing at $3,000 or $4,000 a month and low income housing, we're leaving nothing for the middle class. And finally, the church has an as-of-right option for this project. The church could, under the current zoning, build the project as 55 or 60 units of market rate housing. And that's what they would have to do if they were not able to get the rezoning to essentially enable them to build the community portion that's really the church's goal. So we think this not only enables the community program to be built, but it accomplishes something that's of value to the community.
And that's actually all for our presentation, so we're happy to, of course, take any questions.
So thank you again for your presentation. On behalf of the Borough President, we have approximately 6 questions that we'd like you to answer. So the first question, regarding the intended affordable housing units, what is the qualifying income range for prospective households based on household size? What are the anticipated rents based on the number of bedrooms? And what is the distribution of units by the bedroom size? Also, how long are the MIH units required to be rented at affordable rates?
I'm actually going to have Peter answer this question as well, and I think we should have a slide prepared for this.
Okay, well, it's a little bit hard to see the slide, and I don't know if, if folks want me to walk through line by line here, but what I could do is read off the rents for the, each of the different AMI tiers. And the rents are the same regardless of what the household size is. So for studios at the 60% of AMI level, the studio rent would be $761. The 1-bedroom rent would be $963. The 2-bedroom rent would be $1166. And the 3-bedroom rent would be $1339. And broadly, that tier provides affordable housing for people earning between $26,000 and about $66,000 per year, and those are household incomes. So probably, I think most of the folks know this here, but household means if you've got 2 income earners in the household, it's their total income together. Then at the 100% of AMI tier, studios would be $1377. 1-bedrooms would be $1733. 2-bedrooms would be $2,089, and 3-bedrooms would be $2406. And this tier would provide housing for people earning between $47,000 approximately and $143,000 per year. And then finally, for the 130% of AMI tier, for studios, the rent would be $1,807. 1-bedrooms, $2,270. 2-bedrooms, $2,733, and 3-bedrooms, $3,150. And that would provide housing for people, for households earning between about $62,000 and $182,000 per year. And then I think on the MIH, there was a question about the MIH units.
Actually, it should have been non-MIH units. How long are the non-MIH units required to be rented?
So the
at affordable
non-MIH
rates?
units would be affordable for 40 years per the term of the city's regulatory agreement. And then additionally, they would be subject to rent stabilization protections beyond that for as long as the tenants are in occupancy.
So just to clarify, if you come back a second. So your presentation, you mentioned 30% MIH. Earlier, we heard 25% MIH. Just to clarify for the record, which MIH?
Yeah, it's approximately 30%, and I'm not sure offhand why.
Well, again, the
difference
programs
is.
in his under resolution are either 20, 25, or 30. So clarifying whether we're using the option that's 30% or the option that's 25%.
I think there may be, I think it's about 30% of the units. It may be closer to 25% of the floor area, which may explain the discrepancy.
So we're
what's
talking,
our
so,
requirement
okay,
is-
so it's the option that's based on 25% of the floor area?
We're using option 1, which is the 25% at 60% AMI.
But it's not actually at 60% AMI, it's an average of 60%. So in theory, then you're missing disclosing the units that are supposed to be at 40% AMI, So if you could update that based on the 60% average, and if you could identify of your unit distribution, how many units are permanently affordable, which ones are at 40, and what may be the AMIs. Since you have a 60% average, obviously some of the units that are higher than 60% will offset some of the 40s. So you could update that information for us?
Sure, we can absolutely do that.
Because
Yeah.
the availability of 40% AMI is very different in terms of who this project could address.
Okay, great, noted.
Okay, so the second question. Given community concerns regarding displacement and the prevalence of rent-burdened households, please identify what marketing strategies, such as designating one of this community's affordable housing nonprofits as the affordable housing administering agent, will be used in the tenant selection process in order to ensure the highest level of participation from Community District 2.
Thank you. I'm gonna have Steve Williams from MDG talk about the marketing a little bit.
Good evening, everyone. MDG will be doing the marketing. We've reached out to Impact to work with their financial literacy component. We're looking to do outreach of about three different meetings prior to the marketing of the units to we're going to hold the meetings at the church. We're going to work with Impact and their financial literacy to work with residents to understand what paperwork they need to become eligible. Also to work with budgeting and credit help so that they'll be eligible on the credit end. And we will be working with them to go through the HPD marketing program and looking at how you apply online and in helping people fill out paper applications. It is our understanding that this project will have a 50% community board designation, so that will ensure that at least 50% of the units will go to people from Community Board 2, but we will do extensive outreach prior to the marketing going live and working with local nonprofits in the area, particularly Impact Brooklyn. We have a good relationship with that organization. We've developed with them and worked with them in the past.
So I actually have part two before you sit down on the marketing strategy. So would such marketing strategy start off with the financial literacy campaign to assist area residents? Okay,
We're going to work with Brooklyn Impact to get the financial piece as part of the initial community meetings that are notifying that this project will be available, what the affordability will be, and how do you apply to these particular programs.
And just to add one more piece to that, of course, advertising is a requirement of the lottery process. We would be trying to make sure that the publications that we do the advertising with are very hyper-local to this area in an effort to make it more applicants coming from this area rather than from other areas of the city.
So the next question. It is Borough President Adams's policy to promote the use of sustainable and renewable energy resources focused on advancing a sustainable future in Brooklyn. It is also Borough President Adams's policy to promote practices to retain storm water runoff. What consideration has been given, possibly in cooperation with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA, or NYPA, towards incorporating passive house design, solar panels, wind turbines, blue, green, or white roof covering, permeable pavers, and/or rain gardens?
Hi, so I'll speak on this a bit. So we will be including a few sustainable design measures. We are applying through HPD, and they do have green communities requirements that we will fulfill. From the list that you read off, we will be including green and white roofs. There are a few locations on the terraces where there are green roofs, and on the main roof we will have a white roof. There are also other sustainable elements that we're including water conservation. We'll be using water sense fixtures in all of the units and all the community spaces. We'll also be providing bike storage and access to, well, the proximity of the building, there's access to green markets in the neighborhood. So these are some of the sustainable design elements we'll be including.
Okay, thank you. So our fourth question, it is Borough President Adams's policy to maximize good quality jobs for Brooklynites. Please outline what steps would be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises and local business enterprises in the process of construction on this site.
So, much like the Borough President, it is also one of MDG's goals to incorporate as many MWBEs as well as local hires on the job. And when I say MWBEs, I am talking also about specifically hiring local MWBs as much as possible. We plan to have a job fair preceding construction. We would work with local not-for-profits, the Borough President's office, as well as the council member's office, to be able to put together a list of workforce training programs that would be interested in participating. And we would host that job fair in hopes to receive resumes early on, so that way when the project starts, there's no excuse for subcontractors or us as a general contractor not to hire. The goal is to have resumes in place beforehand, so that way when people are considering the job, they have a pool of applicants to also pull in and train beforehand. That is to and also, we would guarantee a minimum of at least 8 local hires. We would strive for more, of course, and we often do surpass our hiring goals, but we would like to at least set that guarantee so that way the commitment is there up front. And then beyond that, as far as MWBEs go, one of MDG's goals is to work with local MWBEs, and the way that looks for us is to be able to loosen our typical terms on contracts. When it comes to smaller, especially local MWBEs, you're not always able to get a company that can do a job of size, and so that involves a lot of working with those groups and trying to work together what contract terms can actually help them do the job, whether that is putting up money for their insurance, for materials, and those types of items, with the understanding that those groups will also be striving to reach a local hiring goal as well. So that is a short version of our plan. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, and I can go into more detail if there are further questions.
And you could also submit more for the record if you'd like.
Okay, and our fifth question. In 2013, MDG Design, the co-applicant on this project, was involved in a highly publicized case of wedge theft on another residential project. What mechanisms will MDG and its subcontractors implement to ensure that such labor violations do not occur on this development and that workers are paid the prevailing wage as required by law?
So just to be upfront with everyone, in 2010, MDG did receive word that subcontractors on an MDG project, unknowingly of MDG, were actually practicing in wage theft. MDG, when we heard of the issue, quickly sought to resolve that issue. We worked with DOL to be able to resolve that issue and tried to make sure that everyone who had been wronged in that process was made whole. That being said, going forward, what we did beyond that point was actually develop a prevailing wage compliance program that we believe is one of the highest compliance programs in the country. Beyond that incident, there have been no further incidents with MDG, and we have worked with subcontractors to be able to make sure that all payroll issues are addressed. We could submit our actual prevailing wage program to to everyone so that it's sort of out in the open what we do. But to give a few highlights, what we do is we have a comprehensive background screening on all subcontractors to see if there have been any prior issues for those subcontractors. And we have a mandatory badging system involving signing in and signing out of the job site, and that is actually directly tied to the payrolls that are submitted by the subcontractors for us to view. Those are actually compared with paper sign-in sheets to make sure that everything matches up. We have a hotline that people can call as a third party to MDG, as well as compliance monitoring staff of over 10 people whose job is solely prevailing wage compliance. That includes working with subcontractors to help them understand prevailing wage, especially when we talk about local MWBEs who might have not done a prevailing wage job. One of the biggest things for us is training and making sure that everyone understands what is required under prevailing wage. And so with that, we have on-site supervision as well as back office supervision. The front office walks the job site to make sure that nobody is working that is not signed in, and to make sure that any trades that are being handled actually match to what is on the sign-in sheet. And then beyond that, in the back office, we have a staff that sole job is actually just vetting the payrolls and working with subcontractors' back office to make sure that they understand the requirements that they have. Along with that, we have a third-party monitor that we have engaged. Previously, that was Thatcher. We actually have two different prevailing wage compliance monitors. We have one that is Thatcher that is now K2 Associates, and then we have CCMI. Both companies are third party. They actually sort of vet us, and subcontractors and employees of subcontractors are free to contact them if they believe there is any sort of misguidance on MDG's part, or they feel uncomfortable approaching MDG directly. So we try and have a separate avenue away from MDG that is able to receive those reports.
And our last question before we take our speakers, the environmental analysis for this application projects 2 development sites, 142-150 South Portland Avenue and 4 currently vacant lots on Hanson Place. The analysis does not identify the Salvation Army property on South Elliott Place as a potential development site. If the rezoning is approved, this property would gain nearly 140,000 square feet of additional zoning rights, approximately twice what would be gained by the church site at 142-150 South Portland Avenue. What was the basis for not disclosing this potential development rights on the Salvation Army site?
Sure, a couple things. So our environmental consultant, AECOM, obviously worked with the Department of City Planning to develop what's called a reasonable worst-case development scenario, identifying, as you said, sites that would likely to be developed both under without a rezoning and with a rezoning. And I think a couple of factors led them to determine that the Salvation Army site would not qualify as a so-called soft site under this rezoning. Essentially, the building has been there since 1956. The use has been there for almost as long. So it's a long-standing community facility use. There's no known development plans under the current R7A district, even though they have a lot of development rights available. And also in actually just completed in 2014, there was a 4-story enlargement of about 5,000 square feet. Clearly, at that time, they could have developed a much larger, building or portion of a building under the current zoning, and they chose not to. It didn't, fit with their mission. And also because they're mission-driven, we identified essentially that we saw no reason they would be vacating the premises anytime soon, since they've been there for the last, 50 years.
I just want to note, being a soft site doesn't necessarily mean an existing building gets demolished. It also means that you just figure out how to use the rights. So we're assuming at our end that this would be a demolition and start up again, but still enough rights to work, especially with a tower-shaped building. Most of the times we have soft sites with demolition. It's a small building covering a good chunk of the frontage. This is a very different case. You have a lot of frontage along South Elliott that would be available. So to question whether over time, especially with this added increase, whether it would never be used.
I mean, I think it's a good point, I think. You know, I think that, you know, one thing I will say, though, is actually, you know, the reason, if there is a real concern about that portion of the rezoning area, you know, I think we are somewhat indifferent to that small portion of the lot being included in the rezoning area, if that's the, you know, if that's the recommendation that the borough president would like to make. You know, our development plan does not depend on anything, any of the area of the Salvation Army being rezoned. But you know, I think that early on the environmental analysis was done using the standard kind of factors that are always considered by the consultants and city planning, and you know, for whatever reason they didn't feel that this was a soft site. You know.
So we're going to call speakers now. Call a couple. Sean Anderson, assistant pastor, followed by Sandy Ryborn. If you could come up to the mic, and also note that there's a clock that gives you 3 minutes on the side, so if you could just try to be respectful of people's time to try to wrap up when the 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
I'm going to be very, very brief. I just want to add to what my senior pastor said. Everything that we're doing here is for the community. We are just trying to do the best that we can to provide community housing and provide the different, all the different activities that we can do to benefit the community. So we really we're looking for the support and the community working with us so that we can make the community a better place for everyone. Thank you.
So Sandy will be followed by Steve Bowden. Steve Bowden.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to just digress for one moment from my script and ask how many in the community that we keep talking about are here against this issue. Would you please stand in the way that the people from the church stood up? This is the community, Mr. Barrack, and so thank you, and I'll go to my speech. The ULURP application and the proposed building are riddled with, forgive me, deceptions and broken promises that I'd like to summarize. We fought hard for the 2007 Fort Greene and Clinton Hill contextual rezoning. The effort by the developer, MDG, in its application to seize one of the protected blocks as an extension of the special downtown Brooklyn district is an outrage. It is inconsistent with the intent and the provisions of the Fort Greene Clinton Hill rezoning. Now, what do we have? We have a plan that bodes enormous impacts on the community, yet there has been no posting of the EAS, none, on the website for public review. Why not? Where is it? The lots reflecting the project, covering 142, 150 South Portland Avenue, as was said, can be built as of right, because the inclusionary housing of 2007 embodied it as an adoption and already allows it. But under the guise of affordable housing, there's a wider and more intrusive effort, ergo a zoning map change, an effort to facilitate tall buildings that is non-contextual development that does not comport with the neighborhood character. And by the way, does anyone here think that paying $2,270 for a one-bedroom or $2,733 for a two-bedroom or $3,150 for a three-bedroom is affordable housing? Those are some of the affordable rents, as you heard, that are going to be asked. The application for the proposed building and to extend this special downtown Brooklyn district will further impact the already intolerable congestion, parking space loss, and impossibly crowded public transit hub at the Atlantic Avenue station. The EAS assertions belie the fact that our community is now already under stress. The developer either hasn't done its homework or, forgive me, they're being disingenuous. We hope you will see that this is a barely disguised effort by MDG and the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership to stretch its all-consuming tentacles into our lovely and historic communities of Fort Greene and Clinton Hill, and it needs to be prevented with the Borough President's help. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, if we could try to move this along. Steve is followed by Judy Francis.
Yeah, hi, I'm Steve Barden. I'm really speaking as an elder and as a trustee member of the Presbytery, but more importantly on behalf of SDA, Seventh-day Hanson Place Adventist Church in the Randall Hague, more as a friend, as a supporter of their endeavors in the community and what they've been doing, particularly of their food pantry. If there's ever anyone that I think would deserve this project moving forward, who have been good stewards of the resources that they've had and their intentions and their goodwill to help the community, I would say that Seventh-day Adventist Church on Hanson Place and Randall Hague is certainly deserving of this vote, yes, to move forward with this project for their benefit to the community. Thank you.
If we could try to minimize the applause, we want to try to keep things moving. Thank you. Judy Francis, followed by Jed Marcus. No, please, the microphone. We're recording. People want to see you.
I'm glad the Fort Greene Association representative talked about community. I'm not part of the community. I don't live here, and I don't go to the church, although I have been to the church for several events and community meetings, and I share a neighboring community with those who live there. Community has been used and I think abused a lot in this discussion, and I'd like to say as just a neighbor and someone who actually followed the zoning changes 7 years ago, it's not even a generation ago, it's just literally just a blip in time. And I wonder, where was the church at that point? Community is a group of people living in the same place. That's the first definition of it. And so this group, this Fort Greene Association and all of its neighbors got together and they worked with a long time to change the zoning so that there was inclusion, there was, we can deal with this height business. But to break that 7 years hence doesn't make any sense to me. The other part of it is a fellowship, a feeling of fellowship with others. And I just asked the church, where were you 7 years ago? Where will you be in 7 years? And why are you not working together with the Fort Greene Association and with the people that actually live there today who have protected this for generations?
Okay, Jed Marcus, followed by LaBrage Michelle, or is it Michele LeBlanc?
Good evening, neighbors. To those of us who love Fort Greene, have good cause to be anxious and vigilant at this point. As we try to control and channel change, it's also critically important that we be clear about facts and we try to resist being clouded by fears. The rezoning, as we've heard, is being proposed by a distinguished institutional neighbor of ours. And to dismiss their good intentions, I think, misses the mark significantly and is not the Fort Greene that I know. They've committed a very valuable asset, which they could have made a lot of money from, to an affordable housing venture. And I think that merits dialogue rather than just refutation. It merits clear thinking. It merits close analysis of the facts. And so I want to just comment on a few things. First of all, the special downtown Brooklyn district issue has come up a number of times. And the special downtown Brooklyn district was extended to cover these blocks for one reason and one reason only, and that is to provide a height limitation on the part of the building that's next to the townhouses on South Portland. The words are, you cannot build higher than 95 feet within 25 feet of, in effect, the Atlantic Terminal buildings, or the townhouses. And so that's the only element of this special downtown Brooklyn district that's extended to cover this project. It does nothing else other than that. The notion that somehow it has transformed Fort Greene into downtown Brooklyn is absolutely unfounded and false, and shouldn't be part of this discussion. That's that's a fact without basis. Secondly, I just want to note that my firm represents the owner of the lots the vacant lots on Hanson Place. And so I'm fortunate that we have a firm that is able to both advocate for our clients and advocate for the community in a congruent way. I want to talk about three things about the project. First of all, context. We have a board. Oh, here. So as we all know, the context for this project is the 15 and 12-story Atlantic Terminal. I'm sorry.
Need better to the mic.
Okay, the 15 and 12-story Atlantic Terminal apartments, the 8-story Arts building, 80 Arts building, the 12-story Salvation Army building, the 15-story 67 Hanson building, and the 14-story State Office building. This is not low-rise Fort Greene that we all know and love. This is low-rise Fort Greene that we know and love. This is an intermediary mid-rise area between the downtown that we fear and the Fort Greene that we love. It's a distinct, separate, small, isolated context. It was overlooked as that in the visionary and timely contextual zoning that we all supported. But we should also recognize that in looking at this, it's a different context, and if we truly care about contextual zoning, we should give some attention to recognizing that a 12-story building and a 9-story building in this context are appropriate. Secondly, having stores along Hanson Place is a very good idea.
Steve? Thank you. Please try to wrap up now.
I will wrap it up. Having stores along Hanson Place, I think, is irrefutably a good idea, and we should all get behind it. Having ground floor commercial on Hanson Place, which the current zoning requires, at the building line is absurd, and having stores is something I think we would all enjoy. And third and finally, there are few opportunities in our neighborhood to grab affordable housing units. And half of these are irrefutably affordable housing units. The other half are discounted units, perhaps not affordable, but important for working people, for creative people.
Jed, I'd like to cut you off.
Thank you.
You could make
So those three things, I think, merit support for this project. Context, having commercial on Hanson Place, and affordability.
Jed, be respectful of the other time, please. Thank you.
For your time, Nate.
So Catherine Ann French, followed by Jeremiah Cox.
Hello, I am a homeowner in Clinton Hill. My concern is that this might be the beginning of a slippery slope. The idea of redistricting and changing the zoning laws because there are already existing taller buildings. I understand it has some merits, but I also think it is quite dangerous.
Okay, Jeremiah Cox, followed by Rosalind Hubert. Or Rosalind Hubener.
Where was Hanson Place 7 years ago? In 1963, the Hanson Place Church Fellowship moved into the Fort Greene area. This year we're celebrating 60 years of working in the community. Our intentions as expressed are not just pretensions. We are a part of a world organization that does humanitarian and community work all over the world. We run a sophisticated educational system with over 6,000 schools. And in the Fort Greene area, we have an elementary school that runs from nursery to the 8th grade. We've put out illustrious alumni, and we provide education there at a minimal cost. We talk about the soup kitchen and all of that. We provide health screening every now and again. We have folks come in, we bring a medical van in, mobile unit. So we take pressures and do other screening in health to build up the community. Everything we do in Fort Greene is for the community. We don't just minister to ourselves, we minister to the community. And we are anxious to do more, and this project gives us the opportunity to do that. If we don't get the zoning, we can do otherwise, but we will be stymied, and we will be hampered, and we will not be able to operate at our full potential. So this is a project that's not for the developers. They're not working to fill deep pockets, and it's not just for the membership of the Hanson Place Church. We are an outreach organization, and whatever we do for young people, to give programs to help them to be good citizens and to be law-abiding and to be civically and culturally productive, can only help the community. And the prices of the apartments, they're affordable. They start at $761. Everybody quotes the figure up at $2,800. But let's talk about those down at $761, where working people will be able to afford the apartments. This gentrification that has been taking place in this area is not working out in the best interest of the community. We need to cater to the people, the working classes, and the people who can't afford it.
Could I ask you to wrap up, please?
So I strongly support, as a member of the church, a leader of the church, I strongly support the project, and I would posit that granting the rezoning and getting this project going is going to make Fort Greene a better place.
Rosalind, Rosalind is followed by Dr. Milton Haynes.
May I give my time to Ms. Morales, who's not able to make it here on time?
You could read their remarks, sure.
Oh, no, can she come up in my place?
If she's here, she would have to sign in and speak afterwards. But she could still sign in. She could just have to. There are speaker slips for those who still would like to speak in the back of the room.
Well, I'm Rosalind Huebner, and I've lived in Fort Greene, Clinton Hill for most of my life. I have been a landlord in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods for most of my life, and I've been selling real estate and renting real estate in this community for most of my life. The opening statements are that there is not enough housing and rents are going up. Actually, in the last 2 years, because of overbuilding, rents are going down. You can read the publications that will verify this information, and I see it firsthand. Excuse me, the inclusionary housing, I admire Hanson Place. We support their Hanson Place Church. We support their food pantry. And if they would like to build housing and conform to the current zoning, we would do everything in our power to help them do this and maintain their services. And I understand they're eliminating some of the services. I heard you're eliminating the food pantry. At any rate, to conform to the current zoning, you can have inclusionary housing, and we will do everything we can to help you in this. But we do not want our hard-won zoning protections removed. There are buildings adjacent to this property that will be developed. The Salvation Army sold their other building in Clinton Hill for development. It's very likely they'll sell their other building for development. And I believe the developer of this project owns 2 sites next door. I believe there's some conflict of interest here for future development in the surrounding areas. Stores can be built on Hanson Place. They can conform to the current zoning. There's nothing to prevent it, and they can all have inclusionary houses. So if anyone from the parish would like to meet with people in the community, we'd be very happy to help them work to maintain our zoning and for you to get provide the services you feel you need to the community. Thank you.
Again, can we move forward? Dr. Milton Hayes, followed by Lucy Catine.
Thank you. I must confess that I am deeply saddened by some of the comments that I've heard so far against this project. I'm a physician, and in fact, for several years in my early practice, I had an office on Eastern Parkway. And I've always been a member and a supporter of the Hanson Place Church. I hold in my hand a book that was written 10 years ago that gives the history, the real, true history of the Hanson Place Seventh-day Adventist Church. The people who worship there, the people who organize the church, the great work that we have done in the community over the years that we have been there. And if there's anyone who would like to read it and see it in black and white, written by a noted historian, this book was evaluated at a historic conference in New York and was given grave reviews. And I would cover the cost of anyone who would like to read this book and really see what this church is like. And hopefully you will change your minds. Healthcare is an integral part of the ministry of the Hanson Place Church and of Seventh-day Adventists generally. And one of the cardinal things that I like about this project is that healthcare is going to be provided to the community. Our church is known for its health ministry. It's no secret. And this is a valuable service that will be rendered to the community, to the Fort Greene community, and all those who want to come and benefit from the expertise of the physicians who will be working in that office space. Since its inception, that church has been feeding the poor, taking care of the hungry. We had people who slept in our church for many years who did not have a home. And we fed them, we allowed them to sleep, we took care of them, because that is the nature of this church. That is the heart and the soul of this church. Taking care, not of its members only, but of those in the community. And ladies and gentlemen, I would really hope that before you really oppose this project, that you will spend 5, 10, 15 minutes, I'll give you a free copy of this book, and find out exactly what the long history of this church has been and what it has done for the community with almost no resources or very little resources. And here we have a project now that would really help us to fulfill these various goals. Thank you very much. I get very worked up about this, and as I said, I'm deeply saddened by some of the things that I've heard, and I hope I was able to change some of your minds. Thank you.
So, we want to move forward. Can we stop with the applause, please? Lucy Catine, followed by Peter Osobin.
Good evening. Distraction, a developer's best tool. Look over here. Look at the shiny new school, the affordable housing, the cultural center. Don't look at the breaking of public trust, the pushing of established boundaries, the change in neighborhood character, the tax subsidies, the profits. When you see this strategy employed again and again, you know it is well-planned and well-funded. In what upside-down world do we allow the developers to define the neighborhood character and tell us what kind of zoning should exist in the area? Developers have segmented many different development proposals, but they must be treated as one giant effort to override previously approved zoning by community boards, prior agreements, and the needs of a neighborhood. The only master here is greed. Be it 80 Flatbush Avenue, 142-150 South Portland Avenue, 32 Lexington Avenue, or a 42-story building overshadowing the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. What we hear about are the benefits the developers bringing to us, but never, never, never how they will profit from subsidies and tax breaks they receive. They don't give a hoot about how communities regard their proposals or how they will fare with the results. There is no mystery of what is going on here. Developers are working to undermine contextual zoning. Since 2007, when hard-fought rezoning was won, how have community needs changed? Zoning that was established to protect community character, historic districts, and quality of life was built into that protective zoning. These are immutable, not subject to desire, whimsy, or greed. This is theft of land from the people who chose to make their homes here, who have made the neighborhood what it is. It is a theft of light and air from the people who live here and invested in the neighborhood. The rules are not Lego bricks to be moved around when it is convenient for a developer and his partners. They were put into place to protect us from this very kind of usurpation. We depend on our electeds to enforce the rules that were put in place to protect their constituents. Not affordable housing, not phony community benefits. Couch it in whatever terms you want. We all know who benefits in the end. That sky, light, and land is not yours to give away. We ask our officials not be taken in by these allurements. Look beyond the surface, beyond the glittery false front. Do not destroy the hard-fought achievements of the recent past. Do not break the public trust. Thank you.
Again, can we keep that down, please? Peter, followed by Shelley Hagan.
Good evening, everyone. Wanted to correct some of the allegations made. First of all, the developer is a fee-based developer. The building is owned by the church all the time. The developer has no ownership of the project. We did an ROFP and selected them, and they are working to be paid a fee at the end of the day. So there's no profit or greed, as the last speaker said, on this project. Our goal, all of us who work for the church, those people you see every day serving the needy, nobody is paid. It's all done on a voluntary basis. Okay, nobody gets paid. This building, at the end of the day, will not provide financial upside to the church. It's just going to basically maintain, pay the mortgage, pay for services, and have a reserve. The church financially is not going to be richer. What it enables us to do, as the previous supporters have said, it enables us to expand the services we render to the community. That's our mission. We want to do more. We want to do more for the people. And we hope you will support this project because that's the goal. We have for at least 60 years, been in the neighborhood, doing good things for the neighborhood, and we want to continue that. Thank you.
Okay, again, can we Keep that down, please. Shelley Hagan, followed by Samuel Blackwell.
Good evening, everyone. We are gathered here tonight to reflect on the ULURP application for a big apartment building at 150 South Portland and the removal of protective zoning for a special downtown district that will allow the march of the tall towers into the heart of Fort Greene. On a night last November in his beautiful Hanson Place church, the Reverend Bernard Penn introduced the developer chosen to construct affordable housing on church property at 150 South Portland. I admit I thought he would be a typical developer sleazebag. How wrong I was. Michael Rooney presented himself and his MDG company as doing God's work, creating 100 affordable units for low-income tenants. His 2 bedrooms will rent for $2,700 a month compared to 2 bedrooms he found on nearby blocks going for $5,000 and $7,000 a month. Some people will be saving as much as $3,300 living at 150 South Portland. It is his mission to make it possible for people who can only pay $2,700 a month to stay in the neighborhood. Praise God.
Again, keep the applause down. Samuel, followed by Marge Othro.
Good evening. My name is Samuel Eric Blackwell. I am a lifelong resident of Fort Greene. I am a 20-year urban studies graduate school professor and an urban planner. And I'm also the founder of the Hanson Place Block and Community Association. So I've lived on Hanson Place for over 20 years specifically, and I've seen this church. I'm not a member and I'm not a paid spokesperson. I've seen the work of this church, and more importantly, I've seen every new building that has come up in Fort Greene in downtown. And this is the first building I've seen that has 50% affordable housing. Now, I see a lot of my neighbors who, I don't know what they're in favor of, but obviously they're in favor of what's going on. Because every building going up, I haven't seen any opposition that led to the building not going up. But as soon as people of color in a church where the members are people, listen, please,
stop this
don't be rude. Because I seen when they said get up, I saw who got up, and I saw who didn't get up. My point is simple. This is a project for the people of Fort Greene, by the people who worship in Fort Greene. It deserves our support. I see hundreds of people being fed every week, and I trust the individuals who are behind this project, and more importantly, it's a project that should set a precedent on what we should do with private property as it relates to the development of affordable housing. No one's trying to trample on any rezoning. Obviously, the rezoning that you guys put in place in 2007, it's not working. Because I'm seeing my neighbors that look like me are being moved out on a regular basis. And I hear people who say they rent, they're landlords, they rent, and I wonder what your rents are that you're renting apartments for. And I bet you they're not $700. I bet you they're not $1,200. I bet you they're not minority contractors on those projects. I've heard enough, I've seen enough, and I know what I'm talking about because I live it. We're going to make this project affordable. We're going to make this project as best we can, and everyone will be delighted at the end of it. And those who are not in favor of keeping people who are from Fort Greene in Fort Greene, well, you know, you have a right to feel the way you want to, but I'm here, and I'd like, before I leave, everyone that lives in affordable housing, could they stand up? If you live in affordable housing, well, you know what? That speaks to how much affordable housing we need.
If we could keep that down, please. Marge Othro, followed by Oswald, looks like Helms, I'm not quite sure. Lewis. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Marge Othro. I've lived in Fort Greene for 50 years. 4 young artists pooled their resources, which meant we borrowed $500 from my brother-in-law, and they borrowed $500 from their brother-in-law, and bought an abandoned wooden house on Washington Avenue. I still live there. It's the beautiful house on the block now. This evening, I rode the Green Avenue bus down here and was looking across the blocks as we came down Fulton Street toward Fort Greene Park, and all of the low-rise housing and the streets, and the highest thing that I saw looking in that direction was the monument at the top of Fort Greene Park. But in the morning, I'm still working, and I take the Fort Greene bus down to the 7th Avenue subway. And in the morning, the difference because of the sunlight and daylight and all the glass buildings going up is downtown Brooklyn and its towers creeping up the hill toward the hill. And there's a distinct boundary line between the downtown and the residential community. The residential community is comforting because it's home-like. It's the trees, it's the space, it's the light. It's a release from living in the city, whereas the downtown is busy and hectic, and tall buildings don't inspire comfort. They inspire awe, but you don't get the feeling of people in them like you do when you walk down a street of brownstones. So there is a boundary, and we have a boundary, and that boundary is our contextual zoning. I think we should keep it. I think downtown Brooklyn should not be allowed to step over the line into another area just because it would be nice. I applaud the work of the church. I know you've been there 10 years longer than I've been in my house. I know you do good work, but I wish you could do it on the land that you own in a building that fits into this neighborhood and not try to redo the rules and change the zoning. Thank you.
Next speaker, Oswald Lewis, followed by Ernest Augustus.
Good night, everyone. I'm sorry we've had to come to this conclusion that the church perhaps doesn't need to do what we're doing because we've had enough houses here in Fort Greene. But isn't it amazing that those who always think they have it and they keep it to themselves. They never want to change it. But when someone comes in and has an extended hand to make a difference, we cry wolf. I think it was Longfellow who said, lives of great men, reached and kept, were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward through the night. You see, folks, at Hanson Place Church, we have been working sincerely, determinedly, to make a difference in our community. You've heard, for over 60 years, we've been working. This is our 6th anniversary this year. And we want to make a difference. If you have an ID, how many folks come through that line? Some folks are crying some days. They never felt that, hey, I can come here, there's somebody who cares. They get a meal, they get clothing. Not only mothers and children, fathers too. Sometimes lonely people. Folks come from miles to get something to eat. and we are glad to give it to them. Making our building larger, more extended, providing affordable services, humanitarian services, as a matter of fact, health services, which we always do annually in the outdoors in front of Hanson Place Church, is a fait accompli, because people know that they can come and achieve something and that somebody cares. Don't you really care? Don't you want to see a difference? Please, if you say you have a heart, make a difference. Thank you.
Ernest Augustus, followed by R.Ed Spence, or Dr. Rhett Spence, not sure.
Good evening. My name is Ernest Augustus. For the public record, let me state that I am a member of Brooklyn Community Board 2, and that I am a member of the Land Use Committee and the Transportation Committee. Also, let me state for the public record that I am not speaking or representing Brooklyn Community Board 2. That prerogative is reserved only for the Board's 2 chairperson, Ms. Shirley McRae. I am speaking tonight as a longtime resident of the Clinton Hill, Fort Greene community. I am speaking specifically to the land use application before us this evening. I have read the ULURP application prepared by Sheldon LaBelle, PC, for the applicant, MDG Design and Construction, LLC, who proposes a series of land use action to extend the special downtown Brooklyn district and rezone an existing 7A zoning district to R8A and R8A/C2-4 district in the Fort Greene neighborhood within Brooklyn District 2. There are 4 proposed actions described in that ULURP application. All 4 proposed actions disturb me. However, the second proposed action concerned me the most. A zoning map amendment to extend the special downtown Brooklyn district, SDBD, coterminous with the project area. As you know, discretionary actions, i.e. zoning text amendments, zoning map amendments, are not benign activities. They have consequences on land use. To that end, I must state that as a land use committee member, a community board member, and as a community resident, we never received a copy of the secret, and that's secret number 18DCP044K, which is referenced in the ULURP application. There have been no explanation given as to why that had occurred, but it is crucial to get a full understanding these several proposed land use actions by the developer have. However, a community resident was able to pull down a copy of the negative declaration from the city record. Upon reading the negative declaration,
Get if you could work towards wrapping up.
okay, I find it to be defective. Apart from the fact that there was no notice given to the community regarding environmental impact, there was no acknowledgement in the neg deck of the current Fort Greene, Clinton Hill contextual zoning, and what impact the proposed South Portland rezoning would have on the Fort Greene contextual zoning. The applicant negative declaration made it sound as if their several proposals were neutral.
Get if
I'm
we
okay.
could-
Okay.
A lot of speakers waiting,
Okay.
so we could really
All
wrap
right.
this up.
Let me just sum up. The applicant,
You could also hand it.
I can hand it to you. Okay,
Or
let me
email,
hand it.
whatever, yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, next speaker, Art Spence. Pass, okay. Enid Braun, followed by Corey Young.
It should be clear that residents of Fort Greene and Clinton Hill and adjacent neighborhoods oppose overturning the 2007 contextual zoning. The community understands that debating the particulars of this proposed project is a distraction from the larger ULURP proposal, which would upzone the entire block. Had the church applied for a variance, this type of debate would be appropriate and welcome. Instead, no matter how well-intentioned the church may be, it ignores the larger impacts on their neighbors from the rest of the upzoned properties. The downtown special district is so named for a reason. It was designated as a specific area with zoning that is at odds with the surrounding neighborhoods, confining it within specific boundaries. Many of us are uncomfortable with these boundaries that were established in 2007 that included 80 Flatbush and Lower Myrtle Avenue, for instance, for the impacts already occurring on neighborhoods. That city planning appears to be using the adjacency of this special district to the South Portland block to further extend what was meant to be a discrete district is disingenuous, to say the least. This extension would create a new ragged edge to other contextually zoned blocks, extending the adjacency argument to more and more blocks of residential streets. Where would it stop? Please stand with the voters and vote no in order to force this proposal to go back to the drawing board at DCP under the charter-defined ULURP process. A yes vote with caveats from the borough president, who I had hoped would be here, will only enable a flawed process and tell us that elected officials are aligned with developers, not residents.
Again, if we keep that down, please. Corey Young, followed by Joan Rudishaw.
Good evening, everyone. I've been coming to this church basically since I was born, and I have watched the community grow culturally. This Fort Greene community is widespread with so much diversity from different cultures. You can walk one store away and there's a different type of food. I've seen celebrities to just people coming here just for the said area. But you have to understand, along with the culture, you see a lot of poverty as well. With the church, we have opened the community. There's a lot of health forums that we do show. There's a lot of community outreach that we do as well. One thing I have done is help in the soup kitchen. A lot of people, and I do it quite often. But it's quite funny that the people who push community development, I've never seen help in the soup kitchen. I've helped in the Salvation Army of the block. Haven't seen you guys there either. They push community very strong. I've been to the nursing homes as well. Haven't seen you guys there as well. One thing I do find quite interesting as well is that I have, just for fun, just looked around in the real estate, and this is actually the cheapest affordable housing in the area. I've heard great things about everybody here as well who said that they were landlords, and I would love to hear your pricing as well of how much it is. And I would love to, go, just inquire if it's truly $1,500 for a one-bedroom or something like that, and what is the going rate for an average person who lives in this area's income? How many people, what is the poverty line? What is the middle income in general? How many people really do make $50,000? How many people in a community really make that set amount together with the family, supporting them with medical bills? Can they really afford that housing, or can they afford this one? And they definitely can. The $700 will actually help them. So I would say vote yes for this as well, if it is in your heart to help build a community. They do also have a community center that they're building. So that community center is right there at your door to enhance your community. If you like your community, you can also regulate it by going to and you do have a voice. Are you really that nervous of a change to help better your community, or are you just nervous that you're losing your culture? Which one truly is it?
Can we not have a dialogue, please? Thank you.
Which one is it really is? What fear do you have? That's all.
Thank you. Again, please keep the applause down. Joan Roederstorn, followed by Brian Brown.
Good evening. My name is Joan Rittershan, and I've lived in Fort Greene for 34 years. I'm an officer of the South Portland Avenue Block Association. I attend a lot of community events, and I recently attended Mayor de Blasio's Brooklyn Town Hall. It was this past December 19th, and I was very glad to hear him affirm New York City as a sanctuary city. And also, he lauded the success of pre-K programs and advocated for 3K programs, and of course, ending the indignities of stop and frisk. These policies affirm protections for immigrants and for school children and for youth. But what about protection for the landmarked and contextually zoned New York City neighborhoods, the special fabric of which is vulnerable to the out-of-scale towers built to benefit luxury housing developers? What about protecting and respecting the zoning laws which already exist and were hard fought and won by the Fort Greene and Clinton Hill community when surging market demand for housing led to out-of-character construction? This ULURP proposal by MDG for development site 142 to 150 South Portland Avenue would obliterate these protective regulations for this site and extend the special downtown Brooklyn business district into the contextually zoned area. If this change is approved, who can trust that any height restrictions volunteered by the developer or imposed by community determination and city council law will be honored in the future? If this 2007 New York City Council decision is voided by the developers and city agencies, others can be too. What does this say to the citizens who fought for this law and those neighborhoods protected by it? Given the disparagement of facts and protocols and laws and precedents and regulations that we hear about nightly on the news, it would behoove, I believe, Brooklyn and the New York City government and agencies to keep its promises to its citizens and its laws. The Borough President should recommend keeping the existing zoning in place, respecting Brooklyn history, diversity, and the work of its citizens, many of whom are still here, many of whom are here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Brown, followed by Patty Hagan, please.
Hello, good evening. My name is Bryant Brown, and I am here today testifying on behalf of my union, 32BJ SEIU. 32BJ is the largest property service workers union in the country. Many of us work in residential buildings like the one MDG Design and Construction is proposing to develop at 142-150 South Portland Avenue. And I'm here to make sure that the development team is committed to creating high-quality jobs at this site. This project, if it moves forward, would create below-market housing in Brooklyn. My union believes that new housing can also create new good jobs, jobs that pay wages that allow people to afford to put a roof over their head, save for retirement, and access health benefits. We are calling on the developers behind the 142-150 South Portland Avenue rezoning to make a commitment to provide good family-sustaining jobs for local residents. We are asking the Borough President to adopt a recommendation that the development team commit to developing a local hire program and to paying building service workers, so those permanent jobs at the site, the industry standard prevailing wage. My union and I understand how important below market rate housing is for the neighborhood. A good jobs commitment is an important step to ensuring that this development truly does benefit the community. Thank you.
Patty Hagan, followed by Misha Morales.
Good evening, Borough President Adams and everyone. ULURP started out straight in 1975. It was supposed to prevent the outbreak of another Robert Moses urban renewal, so-called spasm. That was the idea. The reality is ULURP is a developer's dream date. His project is already in the bag by the time he files his ULURP application. By that time, all the wheeling and dealing with NYC has taken place. Done deal. ULURP is over before it begins. If the City Council has ever rejected a ULURP proposal, when was that? Who believes this City Council, indebted as it is to the Real Estate Board of New York, REBNY, won't vote as one for every ULURP that arrives on the chamber floor? Who believes the City Council won't automatically approve MDG's application to bust the 2007 contextual zoning on South Portland? We remember when the ULURP Express delivered the downtown Brooklyn development plan to the City Council in 2004. The council vote was 50-1. The downtown Brooklyn development plan kicked off the Manhattanization of Brooklyn. We have been swarmed and overtowered by skyscrapers ever since. Robert Moses would be proud. He would love ULURP, but we, the people of Brooklyn, do not. We say with Community Board 2, no to the South Portland rezoning, no to intruding the downtown Brooklyn special business district into historic Fort Greene. Historic Fort Greene is not downtown Brooklyn and never will be. Downtown Brooklyn would be totally out of place in Fort Greene. Keep downtown Brooklyn downtown. And to the church, build as of right. That'll get you plenty.
Can we keep the applause down, please? Morales, followed by Lisa Sarabella.
Good evening. My name is Maisha Morales. I'm a community activist, born and raised in Brooklyn, lifelong resident of Fort Greene. I am here as a human rights activist, as a housing rights activist. I am against the rezoning, right? But not for the reasons where some of you may think. Again, I agree with some of the people that are opposing it. I am not against the rezoning being specific to your site. It can be done. But I think one of the issues that I do have with your development is that it is not real affordable housing, right? I'm also a board member of a 45-year-old housing organization, Real Affordable Housing, that was founded by Blacks and Latinos in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And I know that it is doable, that you guys can build real affordable housing. You need to fire these developers, go back to the drawing board, speak to real affordable, nonprofit, affordable housing developers. Hey, I'm willing to work with you guys, introduce you to them. We can build real affordable housing. One of the things that we're in dire need, because 60% is not affordable, okay? One of the things we're in dire need is senior housing. Right now, especially the Black and Latino, few senior, lifelong senior residents that we have are being displaced. I'm also an activist and advocate for seniors, okay, who are looking at going to shelters. They won't survive in shelters. There are no shelters built for them. Okay, so if you really want to, I support everything that you want to do as far as programming. Believe me, you have someone who will champion by your side, but it has to be done correctly, and it has to be really affordable. It can be done. You can get HUD money, HPD money, enroll in the SARA program. If you're willing to talk, I'm willing to talk with you guys and introduce you to real affordable housing developers. And you'll probably make more of a profit than you would on this project. And in the end, you'll really be doing something good, right, for the community, for our elders, the most vulnerable, right? And who, majority, the percentage are Blacks and Latinos who are at, that disadvantage of being low income and lacking real affordable housing. So please, I am against this for reasons of the rezoning, I am for specific rezoning just for your site, but it has to include real affordable housing. I'm willing to work with you guys and introduce you to the folks. Please consider it. Thank you.
We have, can we keep that down, please? Lisa Sarabella, followed by Alan Rosner.
Hi, my name is Lisa Sarabella, and I'm a lifelong resident of Brooklyn, 50 years old now, and lived in Fort Greene for the last 20 years. I'm a homeowner. I'm a very small-time developer who just converted a 4-family building to 4 condos. I'm a landlord, and I agree with everything that was just said about keeping the zoning in place and all the reasons that were mentioned, and the possibility of the church applying for a variance versus rezoning the whole block or location. And I agree with the woman who just spoke about what's real affordable housing, because to me, what would make a real difference for low-income people or middle-income people is if they can afford to become condo owners, not get caught in this rent of $700, $900. How can they get down payment assistance or loans for down payments? How can they actually become a property owner, a condo owner, so they could pass that on to future generations and their beneficiaries? That's what affordable housing means to me, is purchasing. Because if these people are going to rent for $700, $900 till they die, what happens at that point? Who's collecting the rent from these tenants? Does the church collect the rent? Does it go into a nonprofit checking account? What does the rent get used for? Does it go towards nonprofit humanitarian things? Who manages that? And how does that benefit the homeowner, the low-income, middle-income people that want to, strive and not be stuck in this rat race of rents going up every year by 5%, 10%. And can you pass that on to your family? Is it like rent control, where if you live in this thing for 50 years, you get to leave it to your son or your daughter? What happens then when you die if you're in one of these low-rent apartments? So I love the woman who just talked about affordable housing, and I also agree with everything that was said about why the zoning has to be kept in place. We've already destroyed the character of Fort Greene. The buildings are already encroaching. We can't afford the slippery slope. And there's not enough streets to drive on. Quite frankly, we should be knocking buildings down so traffic can actually flow and get through Fort Greene and Flatbush Avenue. We shouldn't be building more because there's nowhere to drive. There just isn't any place to drive. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Alan Rosner, followed by Carolyn Hubbard. Can't quite get the last name. All right, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Alan Rosner. I'm a lifelong New Yorker, 40 years in Brooklyn, and I'd also like to see the zoning preserved. What's happened is, because the church has been so deeply engaged in developing this project, they've lost sight that people who are against the project are not against the church doing good works. They're not.
Can we not have side, please? Thank you.
There is nothing to say. No one has said anything about the quality of what the church wants to do. They've said the approach has been wrong. There are other alternatives. And sometimes when projects die, better things are the net result, because the next time through, you will probably be working with all the people here who really would like to see the church continue to do its good work in ways that are not disruptive such as breaking trust of what was done in done previously to set up this zoning to protect the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Carolyn, followed by Esther Blount. We have no other speakers signed up after Esther. If anybody wants to speak, you can still have the opportunity by signing up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Hubbard Kamananwiri. I'm a longtime member of this community of Fort Greene. My family has been here since the 1940s, and I live on South Portland Avenue next to the project that's being proposed. So I am deeply interested in how this goes forward or not go forward. Our others on our block are also terribly concerned because it's changing the character. We are a residential block. We're not there to do social services and to have medical centers. They're proposing to take the Plaza Medical Center, which is on Fulton Street, on a commercial strip, and bring it into our block. That doesn't make sense to us. The other problem is that part of the zoning is not just for what the church wants to do. It takes in Hanson Place and South Elliott, as you've heard. That's like giving us a pig in a poke, as they used to say, because we know what they're proposing for 142, 150, but what are they proposing for Hanson Place and for South Elliott? It's just last year that the Salvation Army tore down the building behind them, behind me actually, behind my backyard, that's on South Elliott Place. We don't know what they're going to do with that, and with upzoning, we don't know what that'll bring. The good works that the church does are not the problem here. That's not what we're talking about. We on the block see what goes on. We also suffer from some of the things that go on. But that's life in a city. We understand that we don't live in the country where we don't have neighbors. We try to work with people. This has been pushed forward without listening to the community. And it's very sad that we can't get from a nonprofit, a church, a better sense of what's going on and what's needed in our community. We expect more from them than we do from developers, voracious developers, which we see all over our community. And so we're hoping that this will be turned down. The community board was wise enough to see that this did not make sense for our community and voted it down last week. We're hoping that the borough president will also see this for what it does to this community with changing our zoning instead of building within the zoning regulations. And because they can do that, it's just that it would be something a little bit smaller. And maybe that's a good thing, because why should we go from what is currently a 4-story building to 8, 10, 12, because it is stepped up, but it's like twice the size of the buildings it's next to, even at its lowest point, and at its highest point, it's 3 times. Thank you.
Okay, Esther Blount, followed by Fanis Almantega. And again, that's our last speaker unless anybody else chooses to sign in.
Hi, my name is Esther Blount. I'm a community member of Community Board 2. I know how important affordable housing is. I grew up in Fort Greene projects. And if it wasn't for that living in New York City housing, we wouldn't have made it. But we're not against affordable housing. We're against the rezoning in this neighborhood. We don't want this part of the neighborhood to look like Lower Manhattan. This rezoning opens up a can of worms. And we're not against this project because a black church is doing it. We fought viciously in this community against Atlantic, Pacific Park, Atlantic Tower, whatever you want to call it. So it's not anything to do with race. And thank God I have a brownstone now, and I inherited. And what this project will do for me is raise my taxes. You know, it's tax time, and I went to see my accountant, and He said, your real estate tax went up. I said, no. I said, I know. He said, you know why? They overbuilding in your neighborhood. And the city is not building enough commercial properties to get that commercial tax base. So all of this is being passed on to the homeowners. I help my brother, my house is a family house. So a bigger tax burden is no good for me. I guess that's all. Thank you.
Again, final speaker, unless anybody else would like to sign in. Faris Almontega.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Faris Almontasser. You could call me a monster only if you pass me a cookie. Let me start to say that, nobody liked the joke. Okay, so anyway, I live on South Portland, and maybe as young as I may look, I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, and they're growing ages, and I grew up in Brooklyn my whole life. And the main thing I'm for the project is fair to open opportunity to the less fortunate, meaning less fortunate as for affordable housing, that is, the ones that, and given the opportunity for a greater income to actually afford the housing. And I'm not for the project, how would it extend the zoning? You know, so there has to be limits and borderlines. And going across the board, basically, is the numbers. You know, where are the numbers? And we just want to pay attention to the development stage as it. If their profit, you know, levels out more of a priority than the opportunity for the community, then I'm not for it. So basically, we have to, of course, focus more on the community itself and where's the best decision to be made, and planning into detail and knowing the information pushed out to our community. Thank you.
Okay, we have one final speaker, Talbert Weeks. And again, if anybody else didn't speak yet, you can still sign in.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Talbot Weeks, and I'm a member of the Hanson Place Seventh-day Adventist Church. I've been sitting in the back, and I've been listening. I do a lot of listening because I think listening is important. And I've heard people say that we're not listening to the people who are in the community and so forth. I arrived at Hanson Place Church in 1966. I was 4 years old. And I became a part of an organization that my father led called the Hanson Place Church Pathfinders. And in the 1960s, when Fort Greene Park was a place where nobody wanted to walk through, in the 1960s, when there were crack vials on the block, walking in the same blocks that some of you live on now, we cleaned that place up. We cleaned that place up. We went into Fort Greene Park, we cleaned it up. Now Fort Greene Park is nice. You have strollers walking around in Fort Greene Park, you have people enjoying Fort Greene Park, but when it wasn't a place where people wanted to be, we were there. We've been in this community since 1963, I believe, at that church location right there. And what we've never asked anything from the community, we've always given to the community. And now that we come to ask the community to help us to expand our offerings in the community, we're getting resistance. And I understand that people are maybe a little confused as to what is happening with respect to the zoning. People think that we're extending the special district of downtown. That's not what's occurring. Jed Marcus specifically helped you to understand that exactly what's happening. It's done in order to limit the height of the buildings near the townhouses that are on the block, okay? Now, when this project first started, the mandate with respect to this project was twofold, really, because the Hanson Place Church doesn't have the money to build as of right. They don't. And also expand our offerings to the community. In essence, if we build as of right, what we'd end up having to do is build market rate apartments, about 50 to 60 market rate apartments in the area. Nobody wants that. I think nobody wants that. The mandate we gave to MDG was simply this. We need communities to expand our community offerings, and we need to figure out how to pay for it without money. The suggestion then was, let's do affordable housing. And so this whole affordable housing thing came into being because we want to offer more to the community, not because we want to get anything from the community, not because we want to take rents to increase our profit, as some people think. We're not a profit organization. We don't make profit. That's not what we do. But what we do is we go into the community and we help the community, right? And in essence, in order to do that, to expand our ground space and so forth and so on, that is not being charged rent, and the community has the ability to use, the apartments are necessary to fund that. That's the reason why maybe the apartment rents are a little bit higher than you might want, but that's really the foundation of where this is going. And I hope you give it some thought. If you want to, go to the developers, ask them questions, right? Get the true facts before you, just on emotion, decide to turn the project down. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak? You have to sign a speaker slip, but if you could just, wait, no, you could do that privately outside. That's fine. So we have no more speakers, so we're going to close. You already spoke? You could speak outside. You could have a separate, no, you could have a separate conversation. That's fine to do so. So we are going to close the hearing, so at this point. You wanted to speak? You haven't spoken yet? Okay, you could come, if you could bring a speaker slip and you could fill that out after. Thanks. Good to see you. You have to slip. Well, you could brought it up with you, but you know why you're here, just state your name and. State your name for the record, please, to start.
My name is Marcella Hill. I'm a resident at 388 Bridge Street, and I rent at market rate. And I know what it is to have those high rents, and I appreciate what the church is doing. I'm a nurse, and I even worked at one point at the Hanson School as a school nurse. And the church does a good service. I didn't know much about this land use project. I've been going to the community board meetings, and that's where I started hearing about this, and I came to this hearing as well. And from listening to the community and listening to what the church members had to say, I get the sense that the church should maybe consider what Ms. Morales said, to go back and really examine the affordable housing project, and maybe not go along with the developers who are eating up the community. I also lived in Clinton Hills. I owned a co-op there. And I think we could do, the church could have the best of both worlds, where they fulfill their mission statement and also not be consumed by the greed that I see and observe in Brooklyn. I've lived in Brooklyn all my life, and it saddens me to see how it has, the whole thing is being consumed. So I would ask the church to please maybe reconsider the project in a more ethical way that will fulfill the mission of Christianity and not fulfill the mission of greed of the developers. Ms. Morales gave me her number and her name if the church so wished to maybe reconsider who they use to do their project. I didn't plan to speak tonight, but from listening, I understand both. I had to work in the projects as a home care nurse, and I remember Fort Greene when we had to go with an escort. And it was dangerous at that time in the 90s. And I thank you. I hear.
Thank you. So if you could come fill up. Okay, so we have no more speakers now, right? Last call for speakers. Okay, so we're going to close the hearing.
The hearing on this item is now closed. Thank you for participating in this public hearing. Borough President Adams will review the application we heard today and will soon submit his recommendation to the City Planning Commission. Borough President Adams would like to take this opportunity to remind you that the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on these items. The hearing is now adjourned. Borough President Adams would like to remind those viewing on the website that timely comments can be submitted by email to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. Have a good evening.
Was that? I try.
You are so fair.